Individuation from the narcissistic maternal ego, growing out of the child state and into authorship. For many survivors of narcissistic abuse, especially those raised with enmeshed or emotionally coercive systems, the journey of healing is not just about leaving the narcissist, it's about finally leaving childhood itself. Not biologically, psychologically, because for some of us, being a child wasn't just a phase, it was a permanent condition, enforced, maintained, and exploited by a narcissistic environment that could only function if we remained reactive, dependent, self doubting, and small. This is not immaturity, this is entrapment. The narcissistic maternal ego, a colonizing force. When the primary caregiver is narcissistic, especially in the maternal archetype, the child is not seen, mirrored, or welcomed as a separate being. Instead, they are captured, absorbed. They become a psychic extension of the narcissist's own emotional regulation system. The child is not loved. The child is used to buffer shame, used to reflect perfection, used to perform idealization, used to regulate maternal terror, and crucially, used to carry the badness that the narcissistic parent cannot bear. This forms what MPIT names as the narcissistic maternal ego, an internalized structure where the maternal figure becomes not a memory, but a governing psychic presence, one that hijacks the survivor's development, even long after the parent is gone. The lifelong child state. In this system, reacting like a child isn't regression. It's the only thing you were ever allowed to be. You weren't allowed adult affect. You weren't allowed clarity. You weren't allowed anger with boundaries. You weren't allowed love without performance. If you displayed any of these, it was turned against you, labelled ungrateful, too much, unstable, hysterical, spoilt, or a narcissist yourself. And so over time, you learnt the ultimate lesson. Being a full self is dangerous. So you didn't grow up, not psychically. You remained in a state of frozen submission, hiding your adult self from view. You built a false self, not a narcissistic one, but one to carry on through life. You played normal, you performed containment, but your ego development stopped where the narcissistic system needed it to stop. And that is where the true work begins. Self inspection, seeing the self in full. We are often, so often, told to inspect others, to spot red flags, to understand the narcissist, to see the system. But the hardest, most liberating work is this: inspecting ourselves, and not in shame, not in loops, not to self blame, but to finally see, where did I learn to fear discomfort? When did I start apologizing for my feelings? Why does my voice sound foreign in my own head? When did I start performing for safety? Why do I still feel like a child when I set boundaries? These aren't abstract questions, they are maps. They lead us directly to the origin of our psychic subordination, where the ego split occurred, where the libidinal attachment became a trap, and where our self efficacy collapsed into survival scripting. The practice of pausing. Individuation does not arrive in thunderclaps, it arrives in pauses, in that single moment when you don't reply to the introjected voice in your head, in that half second where you observe your emotional reaction before obeying it, in the breath before the fawn, in the stillness before the panic. Pausing is not passivity, it is active authorship. It is where we say, I am not my reactivity. I am not my narcissistic parent. I am not the role I was forced to play. I am not the child who had to disappear, where acting out was the only way to be seen and felt. Submitting to the self, not the system. It's a difficult truth. You cannot reparent yourself with fantasy. You cannot bypass psychic pain with performance. You must submit, not to the narcissist, not to the inherited rules, but the truth. And the truth is, you have parts of you that are reactive, terrified, frozen, unprocessed. These are not flaws. These are the echoes of the original system. When you meet them with honest efficacy, when you pause, when you observe, when you hold, you begin to step out of the child state. Not by becoming hard, but by becoming whole. You no longer need the narcissistic maternal ego to define reality for you. You no longer need the interjected voices to tell you who you are. You begin to see yourself. And when you see yourself, even in pain, even in grief, even in shame, you are no longer in captivity. This is the true work of recovery. Not breaking free from the narcissist, but growing up for the very first time into someone who belongs to themselves. The practice of pausing, seeing, believing, feeling, and a justified return to truth. Peace out. Loads of love.